Okay, Lewis, we're live.
Okay,
Can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
sure. My name's Louis Elbinger. I'm running for Congress from the Congressional District 1 in California. I live in Mount Shasta, California, and I'm really excited to be talking to the Green Party and to representing the Green Party from the northeast corner of the state.
Yeah, well, we're glad you're running, Lewis, and I think you're a very exciting candidate and very kind of unique to the Green Party because you have a lot of experience. Um, so that the first thing is that your experience starts with well, it doesn't start, but the cornerstone is 28 years in the State Department.
That's
Um,
correct.
and then you were political advisor to General Petraeus
That's
and
right.
General Mattis as well. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Well, I was an administrator. I joined the Foreign Service in 1984. I've actually got an MBA degree in computer science. I came from the computer field, and I joined the Foreign Service as an administrative officer, which means that I ran embassies and consulates around the world. But in the process of that, I was able to do other jobs, such as I was the cultural attaché in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And then I sort of morphed into advising in the department with the Department of Defense because I got an MSS degree at the Air War College. MSS means a Master's in Strategic Studies. So one thing led to another. I taught at the U.S. Army Command and General Staff College in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. And as a result of that, I was asked to be the deputy political advisor in CENTCOM in Tampa, Florida. That's where General Petraeus was the commander of Central Command. While I was there, my boss retired, and I became the acting political advisor. And Petraeus left, and General Mattis came and replaced him. So through a series of events, I became very much involved in both the State Department and the Department of Defense.
Wow, that's interesting. And so General Mattis is our current Secretary of Defense. Do you have any insight to his disposition or his position on foreign affairs?
I do. For those who follow this, they would know that General Mattis has a nickname. They call him Mad Dog Mattis.
Yes.
But he had two nicknames, and this is what's not generally known. His other nickname was the Warrior Monk. And the reason is he's a single guy, and he's got a library of 7,000 books. And the man has read most of the books on warfare and statecraft. He's a real patriot in the sense that he's willing to die for his country, and he's willing to fight for his country. And we were able to find some common ground on that. I didn't agree with everything he thought and felt. He didn't consult me very much because I was pretty much involved in something called the Silk Road Project. We were talking about creating, making Afghanistan economically viable. What does that mean? We understood in Central Command there was no military solution to Afghanistan. We understood there was no political solution to the problems of Afghanistan. But we said there might be an economic solution if Afghanistan could be the hub of a trade and transport network that connected East Asia to West Europe and North Europe to South Asia. So this was a project that my office was working on when Petraeus was there. When Mattis came along, he wasn't particularly interested in that. The Chinese are very interested in what they call the One Belt, One Road project. They put about $80 billion into it. But we did get let me tell you an interesting story.
Sure.
Richard Holbrooke was the SRAP, the Special Representative for Afghanistan and Pakistan. And while he was alive, he was not interested in the Silk Road project. But in April of 2010, we brought together a lot of people from academia and from all around the government to talk about about this idea of making Afghanistan viable by making it the hub of a trade and transport network called the New Silk Road. There was no interest we were down in Tampa, Florida, doing this at CENTCOM. Up in Washington, D.C., they were not interested in this. Richard Holbrooke was not interested in this subject. He died suddenly in December of 2010, and his successor, Mark Grossman, came along. And when we told him about this project, Mark said, ever since I've taken this job, all the briefings have been unrelentingly negative. This is the first positive thing I've heard. He took it to Hillary Clinton, who was the Secretary of State at the time, and in July of 2011, she announced the New Silk Road project. I retired in November of 2011. So when I went out, there was by having the Secretary of State endorse the project, there was some genuine interest in putting it forward. So this was the story of my experience in Central Command. General Mattis was not terribly interested in all this, from what I could see. He had his hands busy. The AOR, the area of responsibility for that area, consists of 20 countries, and Afghanistan was just one of the 20 countries. Which include Iran and Iraq and a lot of other problem areas. Okay, just a second. I've got someone at the door. Okay. Sure. Okay. Sorry about that. We're back again.
That's okay.
General Mattis was fully aware of this, but he wasn't as aboard as General Petraeus and as Secretary Clinton was in making the Silk Road project go forward. That was my personal experience. I retired in 2011. It took me a while to find out where I wanted to live, and I settled in Mount Shasta, California. And I started something called the Silk Road Chai Shop, which was to continue the idea of the Silk Road and to promote it as a way of bringing world peace and bringing transportation, communication, and all sorts of cultural communication. People don't understand. In the Silk, not only did trade in silk go on the Silk Road, but the ideas, culture, artistic artifacts, all sorts of languages and cultural ideas went along the Silk Road. So this was a way of knitting the world together. And I came to see that the Silk Road, in the ancient Silk Road, was actually the first internet. It actually brought people together in a new and amazing way. So my idea of starting the Silk Road Chai Shop was to create a meeting place where people could come together from all over the world and learn about each other, basically. And that's what we've done. It opened on May 10th, 2013, and on May 10th, 2018, it'll have its 5-year anniversary. The Silk Road Chai Shop.
Oh, very cool. So in Afghanistan, did they abandon that idea of making it a trade route? And why are we still there? Like, what's the objective?
Oh, that's a good question. What's the objective? Because I left in 2011, I can't tell you what's going on right now. But the idea had a small group. The idea of the Silk Road had a small group of proponents inside the U.S. government. I think Admiral Stavridis was interested in this idea, and because Secretary Clinton approved the idea, we were able to get money from the Department of Defense. Remember, within the U.S. government, the State Department is very small and very unfunded, whereas the Department of Defense is very large and very well funded. Right. So we actually, before I left, we actually had a conference to talk about the viability and the cost and what the United States could do to contribute to the Silk Road project, along with the international community. Now, it's the Chinese who've picked up the Silk Road idea. The Chinese have funded it to the tune of $80 billion. They call it One Belt, One Road. And they're pursuing this idea aggressively to tie in the various countries of East Asia, Central Asia, and West Europe. And there's a lot of interest in all of these countries about bringing back the Silk Road. And Afghanistan, people don't know this, but there's a hub, there's a circular road that connects all of Afghanistan. It's a circular route, and that could be the hub that everything goes into, so that you could send goods and services across borders. Right now, they're tied up at the borders. Why we're still in Afghanistan is a whole different question. I really don't think I can answer that, because I don't think anybody knows.
Yeah.
You know, either in the government or out of the government. There's a certain inertia there. And I don't want to speak with without really knowing what the answer is.
Gotcha. So it sounds like the Silk Road Project is a way that could bring peace and even bring legitimacy to Afghanistan and its government.
More than legitimacy, understand how this idea got started. What I didn't mention is that the budget of the Afghan government was at the time I was there in 2010, 2011, the budget was supplied by donor nations. 90% of the budget came from donor nations. That was absolutely unsustainable. You can't have a country that's being run on the scraps and the handouts and the offerings of other countries, because other countries are going through their own problems. So the question was, how do we make it economically viable? And the answer is, if you have trucks and trade routes and oil pipelines, especially the Tampa pipeline, that would take oil and gas from Central Asia and move it over to the markets in South Asia and East Asia. The resources, the oil and the coal and any other resources that need to be transported, they could charge a fee for transport, and that fee would thereby fund the government. So this was the concept.
Interesting. I think we can talk about foreign affairs and foreign policy on another video, because I know you have a lot of information on it. So let me go on. I want to introduce you as a candidate for office in this interview. Let me just touch on one more thing. Early in your career, you were a photojournalist in Vietnam.
That's right.
And maybe your views on Vietnam?
Well, this was in December of 1967. I was a student. I went to Oakland University. I was a student of Chinese language. And we did a semester abroad in Hong Kong from September to December. I studied in Chinese language in Hong Kong. On that day, at that time, the rest of my class, when it concluded, flew back to Oakland University and completed finished their course. I dropped out of school and went to Vietnam as a freelance journalist accredited to Michigan State University. One of my friends was an editor at Michigan State University, and he was able to get me press accreditation. So I got into Vietnam, and I started writing articles and traveling around and doing freelance journalistic reporting. And the articles that I published were published in the Michigan State News at Michigan State University. I decided eventually to move over to Laos, and because I was freelance, and I left Vietnam and went to Laos and traveled at that time. Laos was divided into three parts: Royalist, Neutralist, and Pathet Lao. And I actually visited all three parts and wrote about it in a journal called the International Hallucination Circus, which I haven't published yet. But it's there to be. It's written in 6 tokes and a roach, and it's all about the days in Vietnam. It was an amazing experience. I didn't feel that the United States belonged there, and everybody knows what ultimately happened in 1975. Of course, we had to leave.
Right. That's really interesting. You have a lot of experience in American foreign policy, for sure. That definitely makes you unique to the Green Party. Let me see here. So you got into the Bernie Sanders campaign. You were a supporter of Bernie Sanders, and you were up for election to be a delegate. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was one of the wanted to be one of the delegates from this district in the convention, and there were I think there were 23 men and 24 or 5 women running. They wanted to have ultimately 6, 3 men and 3 women of this group coming from our congressional district. I ran as one of the delegates, and there was actually an article on my candidacy in the Washington Post on because I was such an unusual candidate. But what I learned, because I was a registered Democrat at the time, and what I learned was that there was a great deal of what I would call corruption, the lack of transparency. I say to people, any high school prom election to elect the prom king and queen is run with more transparency and more integrity than the election that I was part of, because everything was a black box. From where they had it in Chico, which was at the far edge of our district. We have a very big our geographical district is 11 counties, and it took them more than 3 weeks to announce the results of the election. It was all very, very opaque, and that was the beginning of my disenchantment with the Democratic Party. And then, of course, when the actual when it all came out, the actual convention itself, the way the Bernie delegates were treated, and then Donna Brazil's revelations about how behind the scenes all the shenanigans that were going on caused me to I absolutely have, I'm sorry, I have contempt, not sorry actually, I have contempt for the Democratic Party. My feeling is I feel very strongly about this. I say that as long as they have super delegates, I will never vote Democratic. And so, of course, I had to look around and find people who shared my values and my interests. And, of course, the Green Party is there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was going to ask you what brought you into the Green Party, and that makes exact sense. What kind of election reform do you think we should put in place to fix this problem with our election system?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious to everyone that our government is up to the highest bidder with Citizens United, and the fact that the corporations control both of the major parties, and the fact that both of the major parties make it a duopoly where a third party can't get any traction. All the efforts, my candidacy has taught me from beginning to end all the hurdles and all the obstacles that are in the way of a citizen standing up and seeking to be a representative. Now, some of those ideas do make sense. Some of the restrictions do make sense. You know, you don't want to. You have to be. It has to be orderly. It can't be a free for all. There has to be some common sense in it. And many of them don't. Many of them are. There's a lot of catch-22s in there where you have to have one thing. We have to have something in order to get something else, and in order to do those two things, they cancel each other out. I could give examples, but it would take a while.
Yeah. So, go ahead.
Well, let's get back to the question. I decided to run as a Green. I looked around. We have a right-wing Republican representative in Congress here. Our district is gerrymandered, so it will be Republican. And it's a pretty safe district for the Republicans because it is gerrymandered the way it is. But my representative does not represent my values and interests. And when I look at the Democratic Party, I see that I just consider them to be Republicans with a smiley face. You know, they're not much different. They are different, I would say, but not much different. And they're all playing the same win-lose game. We need a new paradigm of how to go about our governance. And I think it's becoming. Bernie Sanders made that clear. He brought that out. So many of his programs and his ideas, were really for the people versus the corporations. But I'm not so much interested. The new paradigm isn't about 99% versus 1%. I'm saying we're all 100%. We're all in this together. And if I could sit down with Bernie Sanders and give him one piece of advice, I would say, Bernie, drop the R in revolution. That to revolve means to go around in circles, and we're already doing that. I would say evolution is what we need. That's to spiral upward. That means to include everyone and to find the common ground. This comes from my diplomatic status, perhaps, where I'm always interested in conflict resolution. How are we going to find the common ground between people? And to me, the Republicans represent basically instinct, and the Democrats represent intellect. But nobody is talking about intuition, which is the bridge that brings instinct and intellect together. And that's what I want to do. I want to foster intuition. The color green is the color in the center of the spectrum of visible light. It means balance, growth, abundance, and nature. And it also means the heart chakra. It's in the center of the body. It's in the center of things. Balance and centeredness is what we need. And that's what we lack as a group, as a culture, as a nation, maybe even as a planet. We're lacking the center and the balance. And this is what I would want to bring. I like the fact that Greens in Germany say, we are not left nor right, we are forward. I like that, because why should we reject any good ideas from anywhere? I say that ideology is over. There's no more isms. The only ism that I would accept myself is pragmatism. And pragmatism means if there's good ideas on the right, use them. If there's good ideas on the left, use them. Put them together and make something that works for everybody. And that's where I'm coming from.
Wow, very interesting. I like that moving forward saying. That's really good. I think that's what the Green Party does stand for, and that's a good way to frame it. So right now you're trying to build the Green Party there in your district, trying to build county Green Parties all over your district. Can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. This is a very big geographic district with a sparse population for California. There's 53 congressional districts in California, and this is one of the biggest ones in the northeast corner. There are 11 counties in this district, 8 full counties and 3 partial counties. And Michael, think about this. Of the 11 counties in June 2016, 10 of them went for Bernie. Think about that. 10
That's
of them.
Amazing.
So what that means to me is there's a huge network of burners out there who are not represented in Congress. And that is including me. I mean, that includes myself. So that is the real reason I've had to step forward and put myself forward for this job, because there's no one out there doing it. You know, everybody gets emails every day saying, write your congressman about this issue and about that issue. Well, I can't, because my congressman doesn't care about what I think. So I look around and say, well, where is someone who cares? And there's no one out there. There are some good people running. I know of 3 people who are running as Democrats for this job, but they're not offering anything new. They're not offering a new paradigm. They're offering the same old stuff. It's the old wine in a slightly new plastic bottle. So I've told you already, and I'm going to repeat it again and again and again. I would not vote Democratic as long as they have super delegates. It's not the Democratic Party; it's the undemocratic party. Hillary Clinton went into that primary with Bernie Sanders with 400 committed superdelegates already in her pocket. That's ridiculous. That's utterly ridiculous, because I believe if the election had been free and fair, we'd be talking about President Sanders right now.
Absolutely. And I think when you go into the election with that many superdelegates, it just influences the voters to just say that it's pointless to go in and try to.
Yeah. And still, I give Bernie lots of credit. He fought a good battle. He fought on, but at the end, when Donna Brazile called him and said, "Yeah, I've discovered they really did cheat you. They really did tilt her. They had their thumb on the scale. It really did happen." We all know that this is not speculation. This is a fact, and there has to be a price that has to be paid for that. And the price is that unless they eliminate superdelegates entirely, they will never get my vote. But that's the negative side of it. The positive side is, look at the Greens. The Greens don't take money from corporations. The Greens really do represent the people, and we've got a really good program called the California Green New Deal. It's got 4 points in it on economic justice, ecology, financial reform, and democracy. those under each of those points, there's 5 or 6 bullets that talk about what we're going to do to make this country work for everyone.
Yeah, I also
And
like the saying people, planet, and peace over profit as well. That kind of sums it up. So you kind of told me why you decided to run and why that's important. What's important there in your district or important to Shasta? What's unique to your region?
well, Mount Shasta is unique on the planet. It's a sacred site. It's one of the great sacred sites of North America, but we have people from all over the world. Mount Shasta, the Japanese see a connection between Mount Fuji and Mount Shasta. They're sister mountains that are sacred. And so this is a very unique place. But the district itself is very big. We have the major cities are in Shasta County, we have Redding, and in Butte County, we have Chico. Chico also has a university there, so I'm expecting to find a lot of support with the young people down in Chico who also were supporters of Bernie. Unemployment is a big problem here. Lack of resources is a big problem here. Lack of jobs. The same malaise that affects the country affects this place in many ways, and so I want to vote in Congress in such a way that we steer the resources of the country toward the people and not toward the corporations.
I see. Yeah. So Shasta, I've been going to since I was a child. Reading, I've been going to since I was a child. It's very beautiful there, and I think it's a place that should be preserved. Can you talk about your views on environmental issues and preserving places like the Lassen National Park and Shasta itself, the waterways?
Well, let me tell you this, Michael. A lot of this is, I'm talking about sacred activism. I'm talking about a spiritual thing, and this is connected to that. I want to be the voice of Mount Shasta in the halls of Congress. To me, that means 5 things, okay? Clean air, right human relations, stewardship of Mother Earth, and consideration for the 7th generation. Now, we want to leave the planet, we want to leave the air clean and the water clean for our kids, for our grandkids, and for 7 generations beyond. And right now we have an issue here in Mount Shasta. There's a bottling plant that Crystal Geyser wants to open up, and we have a wonderful collection of water protectors here. Our group we're fierce when it comes to that. The people who live in Mount Shasta feel that it's a sacred duty to protect the clean water that flows from this sacred mountain. And all we're asking for is an honest environmental impact report before they open up the bottling plant. And we're battling the forces of greed and corruption here in order to do that. For a couple of years, we've been able to stave them off. First of all, they were just going to open up the plant even without an EIR, or environmental impact report. We stopped that, and they came up with an EIR that we think is not a true or a full EIR that takes into consideration all the environmental impact that this bottling plant. We'd like to be water protectors here and throughout the planet, and that's where I come from. Frankly, I have a very personal interest in it. I live about a mile or 2 from the plant, and I have a well on my property. If they start pumping out water at a rate that depletes and impedes the wells in this area, I personally will not have water coming out of my tap. So that's an incentive that anybody can understand and imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is what with the Dakota Access Pipeline in the Dakotas that they were fighting for, is they were fighting for their real supply of water, and are fighting for that. So I do understand that. That's interesting. That's something I didn't know too much about. Let's talk about some of the policy issues. What California is very interested in healthcare right now. There's SB 562. Now you're running for U.S. Congress,
That's
so
right.
it would be done on a national level, or So, what's your opinion on universal healthcare?
Well, Michael Moore did a great movie called Where to Invade Next. And he went around several countries in Europe and showed the things that they're doing that provide healthcare and education and prisons reform in other countries that works. These are not pie in the sky ideas that people are talking about as possibilities. These are programs that actually work. These people are the people in some of the European countries are getting, even our Canadian cousins and brothers are getting healthcare that's delivered at a lower cost and a better quality than we are getting. Well, our healthcare system props up the insurance companies, and it's for profit. What does that mean? That means if you're rich, you live, and if you're poor, you die. This is not the kind of compassionate government that I want to see. I have two slogans here: government with heart and vote your conscience. And this talks about government with heart. We've got to have universal education and universal health care so that the real resource of our people, the real positive resources of our people can be utilized in creativity and productivity. So naturally, Bernie talks about this. I support Bernie on this, and I just want to carry on with that conversation and with that program.
Right. So then I'm assuming you're in favor of things like a living wage and right to housing, things like that.
Some of these things are enshrined in the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. People don't know much about it, but on December 10th, 1948. The UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights was adopted. It has 30 articles in it. And those 30 articles talk about the rights of humanity, what their rights are. And there's 30 of them, so I can't enumerate them right here. But people need to go back to that document. That document is an international document that is in effect now. Anyone who joins the United Nations has to subscribe to it. And these rights are in there. Now, it doesn't actually say people have a right to health care, but they have a right to life, and they have a right to adequate living conditions. And that's what I would call this, because all around the world there's different concepts of what is adequate living conditions. In 2010, the United Nations adopted a 31st article, and guess what that was about? The right to water. And irrespective of your economic circumstances. Amazingly enough, or maybe not amazingly enough, but disappointingly enough, the Western countries of the West didn't vote for that. They abstained. To our shame, the United States abstained on that one. We didn't vote for it. But now there are 31 articles in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and the 31st one is about water. That interests me for so many reasons, because I'm from District 1 and I'm from Mount Shasta.
Yes, I mean, it should interest everybody. I don't think any of us can live without water, and I think it seems like it's common sense that we would have clean water available to everybody and part of any community, any government or society. Seems very basic to me. Let's talk about police reform. Do you think that there's a need? Do you think we're over-policed? Do you think police are over-militarized? Give me your opinion on the state of the police in the country right now.
Well, keep in mind, when I spent 20 of my 28 years in the Foreign Service overseas. So to some extent, I look at America as a foreign country. I look at it from a point of view of someone who hasn't lived here all the time. And when I was overseas, I was representing the highest ideals of the United States. When I got back to the United States and read some of the newspaper reports and learned some of the stuff that's been going on here, I was shocked. I was shocked to learn about the depth of the corruption and the foolishness, what I call the shenanigans that go on with the abuse of power of the police, as you mentioned, the militarization of the police. I mean, The ideal is that the policeman is our friend, and that the policeman is promoting the law and the order that will allow all of us to live a better life. And the reality is that the police power is not applied fairly or properly across the board. These extrajudicial killings that go on in the name of the police have, simply got to stop. And a lot of it is the polarization that we have. Why do we have?
It's 17 hours.
Why do we have these polarized ideas? We've got to, again, conflict resolution, diplomacy, building bridges between groups and finding the common ground. I do believe there's a lot more common ground in America than there are divisions. And it's up to us to find and to build upon that common ground. Did I answer your question?
I think you did. I think you did. I've heard before that somebody who's well-traveled, or the cure for racism is to be well-traveled. You being a man that is well-traveled, can you tell me what you think about Trump and the white supremacy that he seems to have brought to light in his campaign, and your view on that?
I can tell you, but let me tell you this. I prefer not to talk about my opponents or what I'm against. What I find that's divisive in American politics is we're always talking about what we're against and what we don't want.
Sure.
I want to talk about what I do want. It's pretty obvious. I mean, anybody with two eyes to me, it's obvious. You look at the situation, you can see what's going on. I was shocked to learn. I thought that the Civil War was over. I grew up in the Civil Rights Movement. I was married for 31 wonderful years to an Afro-American woman, and I have a daughter and I have a granddaughter. So I feel that the Afro-American is part of literally part of my family. My dear wife passed away in 2002. I'm sorry to say.
Sorry to hear.
She's with. Pardon?
Condolences.
Yeah, condolence. Yeah. Well, but she's with me all the time. I always feel her presence and her love with me all the time. So I feel that this is my family. We are in a human family, and I'm shocked when I see the Nazis marching in the street in 2017. What the hell is that? And the answer is it's the poison in the system that's coming out. When you're healing a disease, the toxins have to come out. I'm shocked. Many of us are shocked to know that they were even there to begin with. But if they're there, let's let them out, and let's get to know each other and talk to each other and humanize each other and find out the stories. So when I've got some really good friends who've been working on Middle East peace for a long time, and they say an enemy is someone whose story you have not heard. And so when I think about the Trumps and the Nazis and the this and the that, I think these people haven't heard my story, and I haven't heard their story. But I like what Sarah Silverman is doing in her I Love America project, where she goes around and talks to these people and lives with them and and eats with them and drinks with them and gets to know them and lets them talk and explain their side of the story. And then we find out that we're all human beings. We're in this together, and we're going to have to solve this together. It's not a win-lose game. It's a win-win game, or it's a lose-lose game. But I vote for win-win. That's where I'm coming from. And a lot of people who get to know me and who understand where I'm coming from say, Lewis, that makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a good perspective on it. I like that a lot. And what do you think of California as a sanctuary state?
Well, I think, again, vote your conscience. Let's. It's really true. There's truth on all sides of this question. The idea that people would come in here illegally and cause crimes is ridiculous. I mean, we can't have that. We have to do things. But the idea, again, as a diplomat, as a man who's involved in conflict resolution, I want to build bridges, not walls. And I know that I especially support the Dreamers. I mean, that to me is a no-brainer, because these kids had nothing to say in this matter. So to deport them is just cruel. And I would like to see more kindness and compassion. in the government. This is what government with heart means. So my answer is, yeah, if the majority of people feel that they want to be a sanctuary state, I support that. I personally would vote for compassion and kindness over cruelty. But I do understand, and it does get me upset to think that there's an injustice that occurs when someone comes to this country illegally and then commits heinous acts that offend everyone.
Interesting. Yeah. So it's my perspective that when you prohibit something, you create a black market. So when you prohibit drugs, you create a black market. When you prohibit people coming here to the United States to work or to just visit their family freely, you create a black market for bringing people in. That a comprehensive immigration reform could solve that black market, as well as decriminalizing drugs, so that it takes the crime out of those issues.
Yes, I agree with you. I like where you're going with that. The way you've linked the immigration problem with the criminalization of drugs and with the some of these other things. They're all interconnected. And absolutely, the criminalization creates the problem, and it creates the prison industry, which the whole thing is obnoxious. All that has to go away. All of that has to go away. And how would I do it if I was in Congress? I'd slash the damn budget for these things. I'd cut the defense budget in half, but at the same time, I'd be very careful to protect the defense education system, because if you cut the defense budget in half, the first thing they'll go for is to cut out the defense education system. And I am a product of that. I'm a graduate of the Air War College. I'm a teacher at the U.S. Army Command and General Staff College. And I discovered in the process, in order to teach in the military system, you have to take a course on how to teach. And I did. I took the course, passed it, and then I was able to teach. I taught a course called the Diplomatic Instrument of Power. Now, the point of this is that the military education system teaches critical thinking. People don't know that unless they're in it. But what a wonderful thing to think that our generals and our officers in the United States military are taught critical thinking. I have to say it's needed, and it's important, and it needs to be protected. So let us apply critical thinking to this matter. And critical thinking includes questioning the sources of your information. You have to, people get excited and act on information, especially with social media going on now, where lies and fake news get promoted very easily and very quickly. And that's why we have scopes to check out rumors and to make sure that people are not getting upset about things that didn't really happen. So critical thinking is something that I firmly advocate. I know that it's part and parcel and it's essential in the military education system. So even though I would drastically cut back in the budget on so many, this is the way we control things. When there's no money for these programs, they go away. Community policing, community imprisonment programs, community rehabilitation programs, and of course, the legalization of marijuana, which never should have been illegal in the first place. I've grown up with watching that story from the time I was in college to now, and I'm really delighted to see the progress we've made with medical marijuana, the advantages of it, and the studies that are going on. The fact that CBD, I just heard today about a man whose illness was tremendously improved by CBD. It was like a wonder drug, a miracle drug that has changed his life. So these are the things we can have in our future when we come together and we look at each other as human beings. We respond to each other with respect. We give mutual respect to each other. We listen to each other's stories. And that's the consciousness that I want to bring to the U.S. Congress.
Excellent, Louis. I think we'll sum it up there. I like that you have the amazing years, decades of experience that you have, and that you come at governance through a spiritual perspective. I like those 2 points. I think you're a really good candidate. I appreciate you running, especially with the Green Party, because you bring all of those, all that experience with you. Do you have a website that, I know that the signature campaign's starting here soon. How can people donate to your campaign or come and help you volunteer?
That's a very good question. I am circulating. I got my petitions yesterday. It started yesterday in California. And I've already got 16 signatures. I need 2,000. In order 2,000 valid. In order to get 2,000 valid, you got to get 3,000 because someone will be kicked out. And no, I don't have a website yet. I'm going to start with a Facebook page. I'm going to get I've got to do that. And I'm doing 2 things, Michael. I'm running for Congress and I'm activating the Green Party in 11 counties. Of the 11 counties, 3 of them are activists, so it's really 8. So there's 2 things going on. I'm searching for people to help. I need 3 things. I need a campaign manager, I need a tech support person, and most importantly, I need a treasurer. So I'm working with Barry Hermanson, and I have talked. Barry is running for Congress down in San Francisco, and we've talked about how I have to go through and get my bank account registered with the Federal Election Commission before I start taking donations. So the answer is I'm working on all this. I'm putting out the call for assistance in this. If there's a website designer out there who wants to help out, great. I've got some personal funds that I'm putting into this campaign, and we're just going to go forward just like the Green Party does.
Absolutely.
Just go forward with people power.
Yeah, and I hope you get a lot of people helping you get those signatures. Now that can be done statewide, correct?
No, we can only get signatures in my district.
Oh, okay, only in your district then.
Yeah, in each county. So there's 11 counties. I'm working with Eric Rydberg down in Pico I have the master from Siskiyou County, and I'm going to give the master to each county, each of the 11 counties, and have people just getting the signatures to get my name on the ballot. We have until February 7th to amass what I'm calling 3,000. Technically I need 2,000, but if I just get 2,000, it won't be enough because some will be kicked out. So I'm going for 3,000 signatures in 11 counties. Can't be from all over California.
Right. Okay. So if there's anybody out there that is willing to help Lewis out in District 1, how could we contact you? Should I put a Facebook or should I put an email on this in the description of this video?
Yeah, the Green Party of Siskiyou County would be the way to start. I've got a small council of people who are helping me. I've got some people who are helping me with getting the signatures, but there's a lot of work that still has to be done that only I can do to get the ball rolling, and I'm working on it.
Right. Okay. Well, I thank you again, Lewis, and I do hope to interview again about foreign policy because I think you have a lot of things to say about it with so much experience in that area. I think it's a whole video, maybe 2, and I appreciate you doing this interview.
And I appreciate you doing the interview too. So this is great. We're getting the word out about what we need. I'm being very, very upfront, very honest about all the things that we need, and we'll address each issue as it comes up. We're doing our best. It's like rolling a stone up a hill, but it's, something, there's a lot of fun in it. I want to have fun in this project, and I want people to open up and get in touch with their hearts, get in touch with their intuition, and turn attention to the responsibilities of government.
Yes, excellent. All right, Lewis, well, you have a good night, and thanks again.
Thank you.